Hello, welcome. I'm Emma Rowena, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about grief. Now, I posed this question to you guys out there, asking you what topic you would like me to share or talk about today, because I'm in a position of grief myself. And in this position of grief, in this place of grief, I was confused. I didn't know what best to talk about today, what to share. And then a few people reached out to me and suggested that I talk about grief. Of course, it's a little bit risky because this is very fresh to me. So we'll see how it goes. I tried to meditate on this today. I tried to give myself permission to tune in to my guidance and listen to what I could do today. And how can I open up and hold this space in the best possible way for whoever is out there and for myself. Now, I'm in grief because I had to say goodbye to my beautiful dog on Friday. And I went for a walk just now, of course, meeting everybody who's used to seeing me with a dog. And they asked me what happened. And so I'm a little bit, it's very sort of up in the surface right now. But what I've been forced to do this weekend is to not shake it off. Not diminish my reactions to having lost this beautiful animal. This beautiful dog that has made such an impact on me. Simply because he needed it. He needed me. And then, of course, I needed him. We needed him. It's a dog who's suffered from the hand of man. This we know partly because we had to investigate, because he had some injuries. And we saw the injury on his skeleton. This was one of the reasons we had to say goodbye to him in the end, because finally it was so painful and he couldn't walk in the end. Almost. And of course, when you lose somebody, only 2.5 years, that's the time, the beautiful time we had with him. There were challenges. He had marks. He had some behavior that wasn't too easy. So there was a bit of stress around this. But he had the biggest heart. He was the kindest dog. And what we people do to each other and do to animals when we do not understand or connect to the beauty of being caring and compassionate to each other, it's unfathomable to me. I cannot grasp what people can do to animals like that. So, having his trust, he'd been moved around a bit because of his behavior. People couldn't deal with it. So it turned out it had been moved around more than I realized. And this dog found us and we found him. And once he realized we were going to look after him, that we were there for keeps, he trusted us with everything. He had a little fear, he had reactions to men, because obviously men had been treating him badly in this case. But apart from that, so he leant against us. He lent us his life. He gave us his complete trust. And then we had to make the decision to let him go. And what happens? That was the connection falling out, okay. What happens when you lose somebody? What happens when you suddenly have to say goodbye to somebody close to you, somebody you're close to, or something that you're used to having in your life? Maybe it's your health even, maybe it's something in yourself, or maybe you're suffering a breakup, maybe you've lost somebody maybe you lost an animal. Now, we have these ideas of what we're allowed to grieve and how long and how we're supposed to grieve. It doesn't work that way. People who have had animals or have animals in their life, they will understand how I can grieve this much. People who don't might not understand. That's okay. But we all suffer some sort of loss in our lives. In the end, we're all going to die. I mean, it's a fact that we all know. We're all going to die. Everybody's going to lose somebody because somebody's going to pass away. It's the one thing we know in this life. But what has happened to us? We've become estranged from this grief, from this allowing ourselves to grieve. And especially when you do all this inner work that I've been doing, you tend to, sometimes, this can lead you to wanting to be able to fix it because you know you have the tools. You know I know there's a higher perspective. I know there's part of me who can be freed from this easily because I have a soul connected to a higher purpose, higher vision, higher understanding of everything. But that's not all I am. I'm also a human being. And we have our emotions. I realized I've been digging into these emotions in these talks, simply because I wanted to lift the gaze. I wanted to help you to move forward and rise. Well, you can rise still. But when the emotions come, when the grief comes, it's there. And we need to allow it and accept it. And we need to ask for help if we can't stand it. Everything shifts. When you lose somebody or something, everything changes. The reality as you know it is not what you thought it was anymore. Our house has changed. The space around us, every movement changes. My walks change. Going down for a dip in the sea has changed. There are no dog hairs lying around all the time. I don't have to hoover so much, which is, I suppose, an easy and good thing, but still, even start missing that. Because it's become part of who I am. And when you're with somebody, when you're close to somebody, when you have a reality that you feel accustomed to, it might not even be a reality that you enjoy that much all the time. I was stressed with my dog's behavior. And at times I felt, can I do this? But you get used to it. And if it's a situation where you need to leave, then that would be, you can still feel the grief. You can still grieve the loss because something is changing. If you lose somebody not of your own free will, even if it was a situation, I had a breakup 6 years ago that really brought me into a deep, deep grief and pain and confusion and everything. And it wasn't a very successful relationship. It didn't work very well. It was successful in the sense that we have a beautiful son, but it didn't work very well. And still, my grief was immense because I did not want to lose this family, what I knew. And at that point, I fought it and I sought all kinds of solutions, but I got stuck in my grief. I was grieving a lot alone, and of course my grief was quite intense, so my son, who was with me most of the time, he felt this intensely. My grief took a lot of space. And why could it take so much? How could it take so much space when I knew my son needed me as well? A friend of mine sent me a video yesterday, one of the ones suggesting that I talk about grief, where there's talk about how we have lost the community, the supporting network around us when we find ourselves in a place of grief, and that in itself is a grief. We've lost each other. And in our society, in our modern civilized society, we find ourselves having to deal with grief alone a lot. And this can lead to depression. Somebody else asked me to talk about depression. And if you're there or watching this later, yes, grief can be a big part of it. Maybe you've lost something of yourself, in yourself. Maybe you've lost yourself. There was another thing that came up yesterday that I had to call a friend about, because I realized that I was confusing my pure sorrow, my sense of longing, of missing this immense, beautiful, warm-hearted, big animal, with guilt and with thoughts of having let go too easily, or not managed to help him enough, or guilt on behalf of humanity for having allowed an animal to be treated in that way. There was confusion. There was fear about being alone. You know, because even I have my family and I have my son and I have friends, but I still work a lot at home, and I was never alone. And I enjoy my own company, but I always had the connection, always somebody there. And we were holding this space for each other. We held this space together. So this sense of suddenly being afraid of being alone, of having to face my reality. You don't want to face reality when you lose somebody. You want to have what was there, what was known. And at the same time, you have to face reality. And there's a longing for things to become normal. And at one point it will. At one point, your new reality will become the new norm, and you can laugh again. And I can still laugh, but I can still delve into, allow the grief to surge, to surface, to flow through me. But at some point, this too will let go. It will be released. And sometimes, especially when you're used to working with yourself and working with your topics and your issues and trying to have the higher perspective, sometimes you try to fight these lower emotions, this grief, this sadness, the depression. You try to be clever, or at least I did, and I do. It's been part of my whole story, trying to be clever. Trying to fix things for myself and others. And when I had to call a friend yesterday, and she's a magician. She's actually a healer, but she doesn't work as a healer, but she is. I called her, and she allowed me to accept all my thoughts, all my confusion. I was sitting down by the sea. And I see Christian watching now, he lives close by there. And that was my place with my dog. He used to come and watch me as I dove into the sea, to sit quietly. And I talked to my friend, and she said yes. And we touched upon this topic of being afraid of suddenly feeling alone, because I wasn't having my best friend, my shadow next to me anymore. And this applies to anybody who's lost anybody. You know, suddenly maybe that person is not where you're used to seeing them. Maybe you feel that you'll never be yourself, never be whole again. This can happen, whatever loss you find yourself in, especially maybe in your own health, where you can't escape yourself. But she said, okay, so what does this little child in you need? The one that's afraid of being alone. And so holding this space now here for myself and for all of you watching and for anybody in grief out there, what does that child in you, the vulnerable you, need from you, from anybody? And if you cannot care for that child or see it or find that child yourself, ask somebody else to hold him or her for you, or to show you how to be held. And I do invite you to share, simply because we do not want to continue this norm that we've created in our societies of having to suffer and feel the pain alone. In the old communities where we gathered together and you even grieved together, you voiced the grief maybe. There are still communities that do this, where the women cry out loud, maybe the men, maybe you sing, maybe we've lost this, so we find ourselves stuck in this emotion and you don't know how to get it out, and you don't know how to get out of it because you're all alone with it. And of course, calling my friend yesterday was the most beautiful thing I could do for myself. And she has a higher perspective, and we have the higher perspective together as well. So if you find somebody who shares your perspective, then you can share this sense of grief and find the way of healing in the perspective that works for you. Now, my perspective is, of course, that my dog is not, his soul hasn't vanished. He's transitioned to a different state. And I feel it. In fact, I don't know if you've heard this sometimes. Some people find that when somebody's passed away and they start talking or thinking a lot about them, they get a smell, a scent that was very typical of that person or that being. And the first evening, Saturday evening, the day after he'd gone, I sat there and I asked him, I asked, are you there? This is what I do. This is my belief system. So bear with me for it. But, and I think a lot of people share this. Are you there? Can I feel you? What happened? This was in my sofa, and he used to lie on this chair or this puff next to us as we watch telly or whatever in this sofa. And sometimes he would fart. And that was the smell that came. And it was there for a long time. It wasn't a whiff. So anyway, this is my belief system. And I believe that these our souls, and animals as well, we move on, we transition into something free of this physical, sometimes pain. It can be painful. For the dog, it was painful. And I believe that at some point I will manage to just feel the joy of having let this soul be freed. But for now, my grief is still mine. And that's the thing, your grief is yours. And it's yours to accept and to honor, because it's your emotion. And this is probably the start of a series of emotional talks that I'm going to do. And grief, because of requests from you and also because of my situation, became the first one, also because it's a big, beautiful, immense, powerful topic. It's an emotion and state of being that we all experience, but it's also a beautiful topic or state of being because it gets you in touch with your depth. And it can be so painful sometimes that you don't know what to do with it. But this is when you need to embrace yourself. When you manage to embrace you embrace yourself, or allow somebody to embrace you, so that you can start to tap into this beautiful depth of feeling in yours and allow it to move, allow it to flow, to come back, to weep if you need to cry out if you need to share if you need to. And in fact, on Saturday, that was earlier in the day, I came home from having been somewhere. And on the way home, I started weeping, howling. I was on my own in the car. And the sound reminded me of something that I'd heard one day, not so long ago, when I'd just driven off for 20 minutes to pick up my son from his training, and came back, and I heard this howling, this weeping inside. My dog was weeping with grief for my having left him in the house. He probably thought I'd gone. I don't know why. I don't think he did this all the time. But for some reason that day, he suddenly felt this loss. And I felt the same when I came home and I knew he wasn't going to be there. And what that allowed me to do was connect to my true depth of feeling. And I apologize for this, but you know, if you're in grief, you'll understand. If you felt grief, you'll understand. And as I said in my post yesterday, this is quite daring for me to do. It's very vulnerable, so bear with me. But what I did also felt in that this howling of mine, I felt a connection to how he had felt. And it allowed me to understand even more the depth of his love for us and of his experience of being left, abandoned, and of his experience of fear of being left by us. All of this is all these emotions, yes, they complicate our state of being, our grief, our sadness, our hope for healing. But they're still there, and we need to face them, we need to accept them. And the more you accept them, the more you will allow yourself to grow, move, and eventually heal. And to embrace other people who are in grief. Other people who find themselves in a state of pain, of loss. And so, as I finish this talk today, I'm going to bring in my higher perspective of holding this space for everyone who needs it. And I invite you to bring yourself, your awareness to your own self, to your presence, to wherever you are now, to the depth of your feeling. Even if you think you can't bear it, I'm holding the space for you, allowing you to really go there, knowing that it's not dangerous. You won't get stuck. The only time you'll get stuck is if you try to fight it, or if you try to make it something that you cannot be without. Of course, we do get stuck sometimes, and that's when you want to get help. And you might want to get help anyway. But if you really allow yourself this feeling, if you allow this sadness to be, and allow your reality to be confusing at this moment, to not understand how you're going to relate to your new space, your new sense of being you in this time and space, in this life, in your home. If there's somebody you've lived with, your whole home is going to be different. The whole home, all the energy changes. My son, when I asked him the first evening, I asked him, how are you feeling? And he said, I'm feeling odd, because everything's different. It's not normal. And that was that was the way he could express his depth, his feelings in the moment. And it's exactly that. It's odd. It's strange. It's confusing. Go there. Allow yourself now, as I hold the space for you, and we hold the space for each other, to go into it, accept it, embrace that feeling, sob if you need to, howl if you need to, shout out if you need to, give a friend a call whenever you need to, or send a message saying, I need some help. And if you don't have a friend that you feel you can talk to, or a family member, there are, at least in our country and in many countries, I think, there are telephones numbers you can call, mental health numbers. There are communities, there are groups that you can join. On Facebook here, there are some beautiful supportive groups for helping each other. I know there's one for women. I know there are other groups. Find them. Don't be alone. We don't want to keep on hanging on to this being alone in our emotions society that we've unfortunately created through history. Let's see if we can shift this. Let's see if we can embrace opening up to communities again. It's happening. It's happening online. Let's make it happen. Let's continue that. That's a beautiful part of this internet, of being online. And I dedicate this final moment of, let's give ourselves just a moment, one deep breath of breathing in love, wherever it comes from. Breathe in that love for yourself. It can come from the higher self, from imagining that you breathe it in from somebody around you, from whoever's left you, from the past, from whoever's gone, transitioned to the other realm, whoever, God. It doesn't matter where you think this love comes from. Breathe it in. Allow yourself to feel that this is given to you. And as you breathe out, you can send out love back out to the world, to whoever's out there watching this, joining us, or anybody you can think of. Take 2 more deep breaths of breathing in. Receive this love, even if it feels strange to you. And then breathe out gratitude for this love. Breathe in that beautiful, immense power of love and healing to yourself, and let go as you breathe out. Allow yourself to be you. Allow yourself to feel it's not dangerous. And allow yourself to ask for help if you need to. I wish you a beautiful day in memory of my Lobo.